Hi, thanks everyone for coming to hear the Chalice story. Obviously disclaimers. So who are we? We're an exploration company. We're based in Australia. We have a slightly different approach to a lot of Australian exploration companies. We make opportunistic acquisitions. We also explore for mines and create value, and we divest our assets in a disciplined manner. So the company started in 2006, and in that time we've generated $107 million in asset sales. We've returned $36 million to shareholders, and we haven't done any capital raising since 2011. So this means that we've got finances to think about to do things in a way that a lot of juniors can't afford to do. We've got currently $32 million in capital and investments, of which there's about $10 million in cash. The company, we've got 274 million shares, market cap around about $68 million based on yesterday's price. The largest shareholder is the chairman who floated the company in 2006, Tim Gorder. He owns 17%. And the other big shareholder is Franklin Templeton. So the investments we have are Spectrum Metals, which are an Australian exploration company that we invested in. We liked the project they had. We started investing in it in June last year. We paid about $5.5 million for those. They were currently under a takeover offer, and the current value is around about $14 million. And then 2003, we had vendor shares we sold at a Canadian project, which we vended into 2003, and current holdings about just under $8 million. So the people behind it, we've got people who have strong discovery history, and we have people who know how to commercialise those assets. As mentioned, Tim Gorder, our chairman, has been around for a long time. He's run a lot of companies. Alex is an engineer by background, comes out of McKinsey, and Richard is our CFO, and he's been with the company since 2006. Kevin Frost is our general manager of exploration. He's responsible for finding the Spotted Quoll nickel sulphide mine in WA, and then there's me, who was involved in the Tropicana discovery. So the main project we've got is the Pyramid Hill project in Victoria, New Bendigo. So I imagine most people have been following the Kirkland Lake store at Fosterville. 31 grams head grade in reserve. In fact, the head grade is closer to 50 grams at mining. So the Bendigo zone is this zone in green through here. It's one of the world's premier gold districts. It's produced about 60 million ounces since discovery in 1851 from outcropping zones at an average grade of 15 grams. And the average mine grade, recovered grade for 90% of the mines is greater than 8.5 grams. So it's a high grade province. And what's interesting is that for us is that this area in dark green here is under younger transported cover and hasn't had any exploration at all until the last few years. And the Victorian government did a survey, a study, which they call the Gold Undercover investigation, and they estimate that there's somewhere between 32 million and 50 million ounces of potentially undiscovered gold in this zone. In 2017, when Fosterville started getting their early discovery of the Swan Zone, most of this ground was vacant, and we came in and pegged 5,000 square k's in that time in these orange tenements here. These pale coloured lines are the structures that are related to gold mineralisation. We zoom in a bit on our tenement. So this dotted line here is the line of the cover. So south of that there is no cover, and north of that there is cover. And these yellow dots represent all the known gold occurrences. And you can see that when you go north of that line, there is virtually none. And that's because no one has been exploring for them. As I said, we picked up 5,000 square k's, and there's really only 3 other companies involved in here. Catalyst, whom there's pink, Navarre in blue, and then a private company in green, and then Newmont have just picked up some ground out here as well. So gold mineralisation in Bendigo zone is hosted in the hanging wall of major structures. So Fosterville sits in the hanging wall of the Redesdale Fault. Bendigo sits in which has had 22 million ounces, sits in the hanging wall of the Whitelaw Fault. And we're sitting in the extensions of the Muckleford and Campbellford faults, which go undercover, which you can see these in gravity and seismic. And our prospects, the Carry and Ironbark, sit in the hanging wall of those two faults. So we're sitting in structurally exactly the same positions as the other major gold deposits in Victoria. So one thing that's really changed in the last few years, apart from the gold price, is that people have recognised that how could you look for narrow vein gold deposits undercover? Well, what has been identified is that there's low-level gold values. So if you look at gold here in yellow, around the Bendigo deposit, the Bendigo zone, which had 18 million ounces of hard rock mining, another 4 million ounces of alluvial come from it, is defined by a 10 ppb gold zone, which is around about 4 to 5 k's long. Then there's a bigger zone of antimony, and then there's a bigger zone again of arsenic. So if you can analyse for those metals, and you can target in and potentially reduce your search space. So what this means is that we've been able to drill really broad-spaced lines across here, with sort of typically 2 to 3 kilometres apart, holes 1 to 200 metres apart, and then identify these areas of anomalism and then close in without having to do vast amounts of drilling. So that means we can do a systematic approach, similar to what I guess a lot of Australian exploration companies would do in Western Australia, is we'd do this broad-spaced drilling. We would then come in areas of anomalism, come down to about 250 to 500 metre spaced lines with 100 metre spaced holes to 50 metre spaced holes. If we continue finding mineralisation, then we go to a drill out of using RC and diamond drilling deeper. So what have we found so far? Well, we've identified what we call a Carry target, which is a 4K long anomaly at greater than 25 ppb. So if you remember what I was saying about Bendigo, that's about 4 to 5 k's long at greater than 10 ppb. We're seeing sub-parallel zones of anomalism, which is what you see at Bendigo and Fosterville. We're sitting in the hanging wall of the fault at Muckleford here, and we're getting results up to 4 metres at 4 grams. So these holes here are just vertical holes. We'll drill through the cover into basement and take a sample. So it's effectively a geochemical sample rather than a drill hole, as you might understand it. So all we're doing is taking a spot sample in space. So to get sort of these sort of hits at this early stage is really encouraging. So in cross-section, this is the younger cover. We drill these vertical holes, and we've identified zones of anomalism in these holes. So the red is greater than, this pale yellow red is greater than 25 ppb, this dark red is greater than 100, and within that you can see these higher grade zones like that. We're getting this sub-parallel zones, sub-horizontal zones of anomalism, which is supergene secondary dispersion, and that also creates a great bigger halo for us. And as I said before, we're getting them on not just one structure, but we're getting parallel zones, so we're seeing another one out here. And to put that in perspective, this is the Fosterville deposit. As you can see, it's about 4.5 k's long. It sits in the hanging wall of this Redesdale fault out here. Our anomaly is about 4 k's long and sits in the hanging wall of this Muckleford fault. We've also got a second target, series of targets which we call Ironbark, which are associated with these magnetic anomalies, and which turns out to be diorite. We've hit up to 8 metres at 2 grams in these areas. This type of mineralisation is completely unknown in the Bendigo zone, so nowhere has diorite hosted gold mineralisation. So it's a bit of an unknown for us and a bit of a surprise. We've got other mag anomalies which we haven't yet tested. But there is known diorite mineralisation in the Melbourne zone, which is furthest to the east and has younger age. And the Cohen's Reef is an example of that, had 1.5 million ounces at 32 grams within a single lode, which is half a Swan zone, or half what Fosterville's Kirkland Lake are mining at Fosterville at the moment. So what we're seeing is this green is the diorite. We're seeing mineralisation within the diorite and on the margins of the diorite and the sediment. You can see this very strong supergene effect through here, the sub-horizontal anomalism, which again means is a great target, but it means that sort of essentially the whole of the diorite is potentially mineralised. We don't know what it means yet. We haven't drilled any deep holes yet, but it's certainly very encouraging. So we are part of a really highly prospective tenement package. It's a new opportunity with such you know that exploration had been done in the past. We don't have any legacy brownfield issues, so there's no previous mines. The countryside looks like this. It's completely flat, broadacre farming. It's high grade district. We've got 5,000 square k's of it. We own 100% of it, so there's uplift for the shareholders. The early exploration is moderate cost, but when you put that into perspective, Australian exploration, it's fairly standard these days. And because of this farmland, we can operate all year round. We don't have any environmentally sensitive areas. So, I guess, in terms of why Chalice, we have significant scale potential with the amount of structures and the ground holding we've got. We're well funded, and we've got a strong commercial track record and disciplined approach to our exploration. Thank you.